Hello, it's John Heaton. Today, I thought it was about time I talked about George Harrison. I haven't talked about him for several months on my channel. I've got no more albums to review by him, but I thought I'd repeat the exercise that I did with Paul McCartney and Wings the other day and review his opening tracks from his career. So we've got 12 albums. Again, just my opinion. Don't expect you to agree. Expect some disagreement, of course, and we're all entitled to our opinion. And I'm going to rank all of his albums, including the two earlier ones. So in number 12 place, no question about this, the opening track from Electronic Sound, Under the Mersey Wall. It's a dismissible album, it's garbage, and that's a garbage opening track. And number 11, it's a slightly better album, Wonderwall, considerably better, but the opening track is not one of the highlights. It's a dreary Indian instrument number called Microbes, and doesn't do anything for me, I'm afraid. Number 10, we've got the very bouncy single at the beginning of Gon Troppo with the 80s synth, Mike Moran, etc. And this is the single, and it's a pretty dreadful 80s Harrison track, trying to be commercial and failing dismally because it didn't even hardly register in the charts, and it was just everything that one hated about that 80s sound was in that song, unfortunately. Number 9, a considerable improvement, but not my favourite opener by any means, is Cloud 9 from this album from 1987, which was a good comeback album, but it's a slightly strange choice to open the album. It's in a minor key, it's a little bit depressing. It's got some quite nice guitar work from George and Eric Clapton, but it's never been a very uplifting song for me. I think there's better material on the album, like Devil's Radio and Fish on the Sand. Maybe one of those two could have opened the album. Then number 8, I haven't got the CD of Brainwash to show you. I'm going to pick Any Road, which is the fast acoustic number from that album. It's got a lot of energy, and this album was released posthumously, as we know, and a full album of material which George had in the can, which was touched up by Jeff Lynne and Dunny. But this is a creditable song. He did it on television a couple of years before his death, I think, when he had long hair. He was on TV at some TV show. He just got out his guitar and played a version. I can't remember which show it was on, but it's a decent song. Number 7, I've got Blood from a Clone from somewhere in England, which was his retort to the record company who told him to go and lose 4 of the tracks. The tracks Tears of the World, Sat Singing, Flying Hour and Lay His Head. And so he replaced them with That Which I've Lost, Teardrops, all those years ago, and this one, Blood from a Clone, which was a real dig at the music business and had some lines like they want some papa, nothing like Frank Zappa and not New Wave, they don't play that crap. Try beating your head on a brick wall, hard like a stone, don't have time for the music, they want blood from a clone. It's a slightly awkward song in terms of the way Harrison pitches his vocal, doesn't quite fit the tune, particularly the first line, they say they like it, but now in the market it may not go well as it's too laid back. It's a little bit strangely worded in terms of the word fitting the tune, but anyway, that's it. Fairly minor criticism. It's a decent track. Number 6, I've got instrumental track, Harry's on Tour, which, even though it's instrumental, it's got some nice work from this LA Express band, which George had seen, thank you for the person who told me, at a Joni Mitchell concert. So they feature on the first 2 tracks on this album, and this has got some really nice guitar work from George and some horns, and it was done successfully on the 74 tour. And the Carr and Tyler book, I remember saying that they thought that this was the instrumental backing for a track where the vocal had been wiped, but I've not heard any evidence of there ever having been a vocal for that. but that was quite amusing if that is the case. It'd be quite interesting to hear the vocal one of these days, or maybe someone could make up some words for it and put out a version. Number 5, I've got the opening track from Extra Texture, which is pretty certainly the best track on the album, and it's very uplifting, and much more uplifting than the rest of the album in terms of mood. Did hear a slowed down version, because, sorry, this is a slightly speeded up version, this one, but the original recording from 71 apparently was slightly taken at a slightly slower speed. Jim Gordon on drums, Carl Raddle on bass, I seem to remember, yeah. And then they sped it up. So George sped it up because he was producing Extra Texture, and I think it benefited because it sounds joyous when it's sped up. And if you go back and listen to the slower version, probably because one's used to the finished faster version, but it sounds slightly plodding in my opinion. But anyway, so that was that decent track, made the Best of George Harrison compilation later that year, or beginning of 76. And then we've got number 4, the opener from 33 1/3, the funky Woman Don't You Cry For Me, which had been demoed at the time of All Things Must Pass, but not got beyond the demo stage, I don't think. By the way, I don't think we're going to see a 50th anniversary of All Things Must Pass. If we are, they better get a hurry, we're going to move on, because it's the 50th anniversary is in a week's time. And I guess we're not going to see it, maybe because the box set of All Things Must Pass, when they last released it, was costing £100, so if they came out with a 50th anniversary box, it probably cost like £300 and nobody would buy it, so maybe that's why Olivis decided not to do it. But it's a shame, because they could put out a double CD of outtakes and rough versions, or stuff without the horns or something like that, or without the Spector's reverb. It'd be very interesting. But anyway, back to that track, Woman Don't You Cry For Me. Really nice musicianship on this album. Alvin Taylor on drums, I think Willie Weeks on bass, and David Foster on keyboards. Just really tight band. Then number 3, we've got Love Comes to Everyone, the gorgeous, joyous opener from the self-titled album from 79. Was a single, didn't do much in the singles charts, but I think it's a great little song, and Steve Winwood's on very strong form on playing the synthesizer. Eric Clapton plays the guitar intro, and actually does a version on one of his later solo albums several years later. I can't remember, after George died. Can't remember the name of the album it was on, but he does a good, faithful rendition of this track. It's just optimistic, and a lot of George's solo material was not optimistic, but this whole album was, and this epitomizes the spirit of that album. Number 2, we've got the opening track from All Things Must Pass, where George wrote the verse with those gorgeous major 7th chords. Let me in here, I know I've been here. And then Dylan wrote the chorus, all I have is yours, all you have is mine. And interesting combination of styles. I think it's the only track they wrote together. Obviously George covers If Not For You on this album, but I don't think they wrote another track together. This was the only one, and it's a good, solid track, and Eric Clapton's not credited on the original album, but he plays good guitar along with George on the track. It's a very moody opener, maybe not the most upbeat opener, but I think it would have been a little bit obvious if George had opened the whole album with What Is Life. So I think it's a really good way to open, and then it follows with the huge hit single My Sweet Lord coming second. So I think they sequenced this album, certainly sides 1 to 4, pretty well, so no complaints there. So number 1, can you guess? Living in Material World, Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth. Again, probably the best track on the whole album, but unlike Extra Texture, it's got some slightly stiffer competition on this one, but I'd still say it was the strongest song on the album. Just probably one of the top 5 songs of his whole career, including Beatles. Made it onto the Best of George Harrison, of course. Very nice chord changes, very nice guitar solo, and very nice melody, and just beautifully played with Jim Keltner on the drums, Klaus Voormann on the bass, usual crew, Nicky Hopkins on keyboards. And this whole album is woefully underrated by most commentators. So this was my list from 1 to 12, 12 to 1. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.